basically built lives away from the reach of the messers. So they came out here, kind of like what we had talked about before with Levski. You know, in the height of the messer era, basically there were humans who were just like, I'm done, I'm out. I cannot be a part of this, and I don't want to live under this sort of tyranny. And so they just basically fled. And you know, interestingly enough, the Xi'an would take some in. So there was, on this planet was basically a little kind of enclave of these political refugees. Now, one of the things that's interesting to sort of think about with this is you know, how indicative of the human-Xi'an relationship this sort of situation is. I mean, if you look at it sort of on a thing, it's like, it seems really great, like, oh, they have this sort of business thing where humans can come to set up businesses and trade and stuff like that, and then they have this other planet in the system where humans, if they want to live out here, they can come live. But the important thing is, again, to go back to the star map, is look at where it's situated. It's like barely within the Xi'an Empire. So, in a nutshell, sort of what they've done is they've eliminated the need for humans to expand inside their territory. So the idea was that basically they would say like, oh, you know, why would you want to live further in? We have this awesome planet here. Or, no, you don't need to set up a planet in Kabari. Like, we have a place in R'Lah that's perfect. Why not just set up there? So it's sort of a really savvy approach on their part to kind of, because again, you know, a lot of the Xi'an, because they lived much longer, were around for the messers, so they remember how bad humans could be. So they're like, that's great. You guys, you know, that's awesome. You want to live over here. So why don't you just live right there so we can kind of keep an eye on you and we can, you know, kind of stem your spread into our territory. So it's, I don't know, it was always one of those things that was very fun about kind of how they approached it. And it seemed really nice, but it was a little, you could argue that it was a little duplicitous. Anyway, so we've mentioned this sort of expatriate community that's set up in the Xi'an territory in the past, but this actually seemed like a fun opportunity to talk about another aspect of their sort of integration. As I just mentioned, like, you know, humanity, we've always said that the Xi'an has kind of kept humanity at a distance, stuff like that, and they tend to be very stoic and reserved, and they don't show emotion because that seems like the sort of youthful thing, you know, so they tend to be very controlled and very, you know, and it feels like that sort of implies that the Xi'an are sort of resilient to human influence, whereas we're kind of enamored with them, so there's like, again, expatriates moving out here and stuff like that. But one of the things that we've been sort of kicking around is that that's not as commonplace as you might think, that there are actually elements, you know, among the young in the Xi'an Empire that are sort of attracted to our culture, that have started to reject this sort of very rigid, heavily organized, compartmentalized element of Xi'an culture, and have started to embrace some of the things that humanity does. So there's sort of a kind of a give and take, and you know, within the Xi'an, they might be like, you know, it could be scandalous if you know want to go Victorian about it, like that they would want to do this, but again, there's that sort of give and take between the two. So the two cultures are affecting each other and stuff. Now the exact levels of which that we're still sort of working out right now. You know, as I said in the beginning, you know, we've been really cranking away on a lot of these history and society docs, and are sort of, you know, getting them through various stages of approval. So if you're hungry for more Xi'an lore, you know, it's definitely coming. So just hold tight. But that's pretty much it. That's sort of R'Lah in a nutshell. So that will do it for this episode of Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy. As always, you should check out the fantastic star map, which I'm sure we'll have another link for in the link area. And you know, if you want to know more about the systems and planets in the Star Citizen universe, you know, this is a great sort of resource to get started and kind of start to delve into it. Also, on another note, you should definitely check out the new Spectrum platform if you haven't already. It's a really kind of cool, fun way to chat with backers and devs and just kind of, you know, stay connected and stuff. But yeah, so again, finally, thank you to the subscribers who, you know, keep us producing shows like this, and Bug Smashers, ATV, Citizens of the Stars, and stuff like that. And of course, a big thank you to all the backers who have, you know, contributed to this game with their time, energy, and passion, and stuff like that, and are really making it sort of this incredible thing that we're building. But yeah, I'll see you next time. My name is Dave Haddock, and I will see you in the verse. Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star
And this is Chris Roberts,
please follow us on our social media channels.
founder and CEO of Star Citizen. That was real, but that's too much information for me. I cannot remember all this, and I'm still a little bit sleepy. The crosshouse system. And I need to look if my upload to YouTube is running. Because some of these videos could be 25 minutes, so. And I talk myself here, so that could be more than half an hour, so. Crosshouse. Yes, but I have to look if my upload is running. So, short commercial break. Yes, the upload is still running. And I'll add one more file. I need to buy one of this. I need to buy a car so I can drive around on moon like Daimler. But I was wonder how to get it inside if I buy this Constellation Taurus and I have this car. So how do I get it inside my... Yes, I'm on Port Olisar, so how should I load a car when I'm on Port Olisar? If my car is spawning on another landing pad, I cannot drive from a landing pad to my ship, so how do I do that? I don't know. I mean, I cannot spawn my Constellation Taurus on Port Olisar space station, then I spawn a car. And the car will be on another landing pad, have no connection to the landing pad. Yes, so I cannot load it. No, I have to think about that. Let's have a look. That's the Crosshaw, and we got the Crosshaw Sun. Crosshaw planet number 1. Smog planets, habitat low. The planet's thick acid-based clouds create an atmospheric mass that makes it impossible to land on. And we have the green band, like ocean planets. No, is that terrestrial rocky? Terrestrial rocky habitat, yes. Engeli, Crosshaw number 2. The first planet terraformed by and colonized by humans in another star system. Engeli unfortunately suffers from heightened tectonics activity. Geologists theorize that there will be a devastating earthquake in the future. Nestled between the mountains and the sea, into the city of Quinton features one of the most iconic skylines. Yes. And we have the vein. Ice planets, habitat, yes. Slightly smaller than Earth, Van sits on the edge of Crosshaw's green band and is perpetually cold. Its population dropped once more systems were discovered, but many people, especially those who enjoy the cold, still call it home. It's a cold ice planet. Then we have Crosshaw 4. Super Earth habitat low, a large dead world that lacks both an atmosphere and valuable minerals. Have asteroid fields. Systems cluster. The Icarus cluster is one of the oldest active mining fields in the Empire. So this is systems good for mining, but there will be pirates. Yes, if you come like that, if you mining ship and cargo ship, you have a lot of minerals, then you will have pirates too come and try to shoot your steel and steal your ore. The Daedalus cluster is one of the oldest. Yes. That's a problem if you're playing alone in a game like this. You cannot just go mining alone with your mining ship and then make cargo ship. You will have somebody come and shoot your ship and take your minerals. They will do that. That's much more faster than spending time to mining. That's just stealing other miners, or some would like to do that a lot.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy. My name's Adam Weezer. I'm associate writer here at the LA studio. And for those of you who've never seen an episode of this show, it's basically a chance for one of the members of the lore team to sit down, give you a personal tour of a system that you'll be seeing in Star Citizen and possibly Squadron 42. So today, as always, we start here on Earth, looking at the beautiful planet rotating here on the star map. And we're not actually going to go too far to start this episode, because the story of this system actually begins here on Earth. So if we back up a little bit, we are going to see out here in the distance this jump point to Sol and Croshaw. Now this was monumentally important for the history of humanity, because this was the first jump, as you see, I'll back up the star map here, that we ever took to leave our system into someplace else. So if we go back to Sol here, basically as humanity started to explore space in the Sol system, there were certain people that, as you know, we terraformed Mars, we got people there, but people started going further and further out into the reaches of our own system, and people way out here in this one little corner started to disappear for reasons that were unknown by everybody. This became known as the Neso Triangle, which obviously was inspired by the Bermuda Triangle to a certain degree, a strange space anomaly that seemed to make ships disappear. So at the most famous of one of the many ships that this happened to was a ship called the Goodman, which headed out in this direction and disappeared in this slot right here. But we'll talk a little bit more about the fate of the Goodman later on. But for 10 plus years, a scientist by the name of Nick Croshaw studied what exactly was going in this neighborhood of the solar system, what anomaly was happening. And after much hard work in 2271, he finally figured something out, fired up his ship, and did the first successful traversal to and from the Croshaw system. Now this little part is important because Croshaw is considered the first nav jumper, the first one to ever make the jump to the Croshaw system. But based on the evidence and the entire myth of the Neso Triangle, that's not true. He's just the first person to have ever done the jump both there and then successfully made the jump on back. So let's go right to the jump point here so you can see the fun little star map animation we have that shows us off. And here we are into the Croshaw system. Again, he first found this in 2271, and when this happened, it was obviously a monumental feat for humanity. It was also something that we weren't exactly ready for, because we had terraformed Mars, like I said earlier, but expanding into a whole other system, especially one where you had to come through such a dangerous jump point, something that back when Nick Croshaw first did it, there wasn't any computer assistance on getting through these things. It was all by hand, very kind of like unnerving flying to be able to successfully navigate this back and forth. Now what this meant for the development of the Croshaw system was that it was in chaos for decades, because people weren't quite sure what we could do there or how we could consistently get food or supplies or even people into there. Going through a jump point at this point from Sol to Croshaw was a huge danger and a huge feat that kind of bred its own breed of pilots at the time, which came to be known as jumpers, these daredevils who were willing to take the risk of dying every single time they piloted a craft through the jump point to the system. Now, obviously, humanity wanted to expand into this area, and we had come together to terraform Mars, but there wasn't really any bylaws as to what we would do if a new system was discovered. There were companies, there were even some countries that tried to rush in here to come in and terraform planets in the Croshaw system, but unfortunately, that was very expensive, and like I said, that's because it was very dangerous. Many people's fortunes were lost trying to be the first ones to really claim a new planet for themselves. It wasn't really until the world got together in a world summit and came up with something called the Freeman Act. Now what this was, it was the world coming together to say that we want to terraform, in particular, Angeli, the second planet in the Croshaw system, but it's so expensive to do that, we need to basically be able to finance this. And the way they did that is by selling one-way tickets into the system for people who would eventually want to live there. Now, this was a way that somebody could, invest in humanity's future and also go spend the rest of their years on an alien world. So that was really the only way humanity was able to get the funds together, to pull them together and really terraform this planet. Now, these World Summits all came together to head in 2380 when the World Summit broke under the announcement that the United Nations of Earth was created. It was the first global government system that was really put in place. It turned into the UPE, and eventually what we're now in 2947, which is the UEE. So this was the first impetus for that, and that was in 2830. And that really opened up what has become known in history books as the universal era of humanity, where humanity finally got out of this one system and started to expand. Because once we figured out how to successfully navigate jump points, how to replicate that, and then eventually once the jump drives took over and really made this easier, humanity's expansion into the stars was actually pretty lightning quick past that. Now let's get into some of the quick details here. Now we've got at the center, this is a type G main sequence star, yellow, white, and brightness. It's smaller than the sun at the center of our system. It's like 0.89% of the mass, and it's not as bright. It's 0.67 luminosity compared to our sun. But still, it means it has a tighter green zone, which did factor into its development a little bit, because it didn't really extend out far enough to get all the, as many planets as they would have dreamed of or hoped of. Croshaw 1, which is the first one right in here, is a terrestrial smog planet. This has beautiful kind of like yellow and orange clouds that swirl around. It makes for a very scenic thing, but it also makes for a very corrosive and deadly atmosphere. So it's not something that you're going to want to go flying your ship into unless you're going to face the consequences of going into such an atmosphere. Croshaw 2 was really the crown jewel of the system. This was what drove everyone to get there as soon as possible to try to terraform this place. It was named Angeli, and it's just a naturally beautiful world that we needed to terraform to be able to make it habitable for humanity. There are dangers for earthquakes here, severe dangers that have been noted since the very beginning of the terraformation. And because of this, a lot of the construction, a lot of history of the planet was thought of in this way. Buildings there have to be built to very strict codes, including mass tuned dampers, to make sure that if and when the big one ever does strike, that the buildings will be as safe and secure as possible for the population. Now, this is something that is well known about the planet, but it's never happened since we have called it a home for humanity. So, to be quite honest, a lot of the residents are pretty blasé and kind of keep this danger of this planet in the back of their mind. One of the other things that affected this is that mining was also restricted on Angeli because they were worried that pulling out too much of the ore and the bedrock and everything around this planet might make it unstable and lead to worse tremors somewhere down the line. A very interesting culture developed here over the years because it was humanity's really first home in another system. People from all over came here. It was a real melting pot of cultures and culinary cuisine and everything like that. Buyumbo is a kind of like thick stew with either meat or seafood. That's kind of the well-known dish that came from Angeli here. And there's a lot of history that happened here. There's a few things in particular that are worth pointing out for their significance and their impact on the rest of the empire. In 2781, Messer the 10th went to Angeli to basically see the opening of the Chano Stadium, which was this massive kind of like public work. It was going to be his legacy, the place that he wanted people to look at and think of him for years and years to come. And he taxed the people of Angeli so high, pissed off a lot of people. Just, it was a despotic, very controlling person, but this was going to be his legacy. Well, on the day that this stadium basically opened to the public, a massive series of bombings went off around the stadium, completely destroying it, killing the thousands that were inside. Messer the 10th was then pursued by these radicals through the streets and eventually killed right then and there. His son, Linton Messer, then ascended to power right after. He would end up being the very last Messer in the lesser line. This was right on the tail end of the Messer's control of the UEE. But history books have since discovered that Linton Messer and his sister Fiona Messer